Hey, my sweet students. It's great to be starting art classes with you guys this week. Kind of strange, though, to see your art teacher in her house and not in your normal classroom. But I hope you guys will have some fun with maybe even mom and dad or grandma and grandpa getting out some drawing paper and sketching with me today. I've got a great unit for you guys planned, so grab a cup of tea or your favorite drink of choice, and let's get started on drawing today. All right, for this project, you guys are going to need to ask mom and dad to go online, a Google search, and look up printable or free isometric grid paper, and they can print that out for you. And if they'd like to join, they can print out some extras as well, or just to have fun. You're also going to need your pencil with a good eraser and 3 different colored pencils, preferably ones that have high contrast and aren't too similar in tones or range of value. Isometric drawing is really a great tool to use, and what I love about it is that it's a great beginning spot for you to begin learn how to freehand sketch anything that's dimensional. And using the grid is such an aid, kind of like our training wheels that we're going to use as we get better and better at sketching things dimensionally. You might have seen it used in a lot of video games you play. Here's an example from Monument Valley. It's really done effectively. I found another example from an old-fashioned children's book. I think it's Popular Mechanics for kids, and they're using isometric drawing for illustrations. A lot of times it's used technically, as you can see from this example, if you're designing parts for a machine or you're wanting to show expanded view drawings where you can see how different layers are going to be fitting into other parts. It's very helpful for technical drawing as well. But for this project, we're going to have fun using it more artistically. Okay, for our final project, we're going to be doing something similar where we're going to create a kind of surreal or whimsical world. And I'm going to start off just teaching you basic forms, cubes, triangular prisms, and then we'll get into more difficult things and arches and curves. But I think it's going to be so fun for you to see how quickly your skills can grow, and you'll be able to create your own surrealistic world here. Before we start, though, I want to teach you a little bit about what isometric is. It comes from the Greek word for equal measure. It's a way of drawing things three-dimensionally. In 3D, in case you didn't know, it means length, width, and height. That's the 1 and the 2 and the 3. So in math class, whenever you guys learned about the x and the y axis, right? Many of you guys coming back to you. This would be your 2 dimensions. But when we have isometric drawing, we're dealing with 3 surface planes. So we actually are including the z-axis, which creates depth as well. So if we look over here, the cool thing with isometric is that you can view 3 angles simultaneously. You're not just getting one viewpoint. And the reason that means equal measure is because we have the 30 degrees on either side here, the 60, obviously, which makes our right angle 90, and then we have a 120 degree angle from here to here. Just so you know what it comes from, back when people used to do hand drafting, they would use what's called a T-square. And you'd put this on your drafting table. And the beauty of this is that you could use an angle that was already pre-measured to 30 degrees. And you could run this right along your T-square when you were drawing and get really fast technical drawings accomplished. So that's kind of the background behind it. I just want you to see the math and how that relates to 3 surface planes as we're sketching. So let's go ahead and get out our actual isometric paper and start sketching together. All right, let's begin. Your paper is going to look a little different than this. Obviously, your isometric grid paper that you printed offline is probably just a solid sheet. But I'm going to have you go step by step with me in creating these shapes first as a foundation. Eventually, we're going to get to some really cool, complex shapes and get to do some really fun stuff together. But please don't get ahead of me. We need to start on the foundations and make sure we have those in place so we can get really fun and crazy and start creating some neat things together. So the first thing I want you to do is grab your pencil. I'm going to use a Sharpie just for the sake of the video so you can see it better. But we're going to create these cubes together. Now I want you to notice it's similar to a normal graph paper. If you can kind of see these boxes here, we have 2 sides here, and then we have another 2 sides, or if you'd rather I use dots. I'm hoping you're starting to see these as a 2 by 2 square. If I was drawing it from a bird's eye view, it would look like this. But because we're seeing it in isometric view, it's almost looking like a diamond on the top, like we've turned it to the sides. So if you could start in your workspace area right here, I'm going to have you go up. I'll draw little dots just so you can get accustomed with the grid. This is going to be so fast pretty soon, but to start with, you're going to need to start off slow. We're going to go up 1, 2, and down 1, 2 to create an upside down V. And then we're going to go ahead and close off that shape with a right side up V. 1, 2, 1, 2. So just like you would with normal math, what is 2 times 2? It's 4, right? So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 in your 2 by 2 square. Now to build the walls going down, we started off this, we drew the top surface first, and then we're going to go down 1, 2. Notice I'm counting when I come to those little intersection spots. Down 1, 2. From this corner, down 1, 2. You'll notice that this line is farther down because anything that's closer to your eyes is going to be lower down from the horizon line, and it started down lower as well. The next thing I want you to notice is that this V on the upper surface is going to be parallel. So the top surface is going to be paralleled. Just want you to notice that in isometric view, things that are normally vertical or up and down remain vertical, and things that normally you would see horizontally are going to be seen on this diagonal. So that's why we have the sides of the cube making these parallel V's. Okay, let's go ahead and draw a couple of those. I'm going to show you a couple cool tricks before we get onto more complex shapes. We're going to go again, up 2, down 2, and we're going to start going faster and faster as this becomes like second nature to you. We're going to go down 1, 2 on each corner. Now I could go back in this corner if my block was see-through, but for now we're going to keep it opaque. We're going to copy this V here down below, and we're going to do a couple different treatments to these cubes. So let's first get a sense of space. I want you to take your colored pencils and color one side with one of your colors, and I want you to take another color. You can do a more beautiful job than me. I'm going to rush for the sake of the video. And the reason I'm doing this is because some of you, you'll catch on to this very quickly. Your sense of space is really keen, but for others, there's the grid lines and all these different lines. It's hard for them to gain a sense of perspective of the space. So this helps adding the color. So what we could do just for fun's sake is imagine this little lady right here with her hands up praising the Lord. She's looking this direction, so she's seeing this surface plane. If I had a gentleman over here, he's over here praising the Lord, and his direction, he's looking at that surface. And imagine I was a bird up in the air and looking down, and I would see this top surface. We're going to switch things up a little bit, and I want you to draw another 2 by 2 cube. So let's go up 1, 2 on the diagonal, down diagonal 2, do an upside down V, and then a right side up V, and then finish off those walls, keeping them all 1, 2, keeping the length consistent, and then replicate that V again. This time we're going to do something very different though. This was a closed box. For this one, I want us to experiment with opening up the box as if it had no lid on top. So could you go in that top corner and draw a line directly vertically down into the shape? And I'm going to stop that line when it runs into the other spaces. Now this is where the coloring is very helpful. I'm going to have us keep the sides consistent, so this side is still red. Our right side, is still blue. However, in this case, because we have no top anymore, there is no yellow surface to be seen. So what we're going to do is realize that we could go inside this box, and if I was that gentleman in the blue, these two surfaces would be facing him, and the woman praising on the left, she would be facing those two surfaces. One last cube, because we have one more cool trick I want to show you. If you could again go up 2, down 2, make our right side up V. Hope this is getting really comfortable and easy for you at this point. Down 2 on each one. Replicate that. Now for this time, instead of going in this top surface, I want you to realize that you can create any entrance point. So if I wanted to go in from the right side, I could take the far bottom right corner and draw diagonally up. And now I have a sense of space where I could almost drive a car into that space. So let's color coordinate that. If we were a bird, we would still see that top yellow. The lady on the left, we're still going to see the red. And the gentleman, let's see, he would be, oh, I'm sorry, this would be the lady in the red again as well, facing the same surface. And this would be facing the top. So this is now we see the ceiling and the floor. Pretty cool. Now, right now they're paper thin. We're gonna start on a couple more of these shapes that's gonna be able to help us to expand the shapes and learn that we can draw not only from the top down, but we're gonna learn how to draw from the base up and from the side across. So let's get ready for some more complicated shapes. All right, now that you guys mastered basic cubes, I want to get into shapes like this where we're actually subtracting. So I want you to imagine for a second here, or if you look, this shape here is pretty much the same thing as the top of a cube, except we've cut out or carved part of it. So that's called a subtractive technique. So if you go ahead and go up to, down to, as if you're creating a normal box. Let me draw it in pencil for you as well. So if I was just going to draw a normal cube, but let's say I don't want the surface to be a square, I can subtract or carve out any shape I want. In this case, I'm going to draw a little parallel upside down V, so it looks like a chevron pattern, and erase this chunk, subtract it out. So in essence now I have, if you want to look at it this way, 1, 2, 3 out of the 4 that we had on our original cube. For this one too, let's get beyond our typical 2 tall height. Let's make this one have some more length. Let's see what they did in the example. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks tall, if you can see that. So let's try on ours to go ahead and pull down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now some students I find like to count as they go. Some like to actually put dots as they're getting accustomed to this technique. So you could count 5 dots like that. And try your best to stay on the grid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what can you tell me? What do you think? Why are these 2 lines longer? Because they were lower down on the picture plane, so it makes sense. Again, we talked about how these parallels are seen in isometric all the time. It's kind of fun to solve the puzzle. Do you see that kind of wide W there? The base is going to be the same as the top. So if the top went diagonal down, diagonal up, diagonal down, diagonal up, we're going to see the same at the base. Diagonal down, diagonal up, diagonal down, diagonal up. Now let's try color coordinating this guy with our awesome woman praising on the left. So that's going to be this surface. And again, we won't need this at some point. I'm just giving you this color coordinating as some training wheels until our eyes become accustomed to seeing things in this way. The gentleman in the blue would be on this side. And again, we have our woman praising here. And of course, I think you know our yellow for the bird's eye view would be on the top surface. So what a cool way. We figured out cubes, a little bit of subtractive technique. Next, we're going to move on to trying to draw things from a different angle. So thus far, we've drawn things always with the top shape and pulling down. I want to show you this one right here. It reminds me of an old school video game called Cubert. And for this particular example, we're not going to draw the tops of the stairs to start with. So in isometric, it's kind of like all kinds of math problems where you don't always have to do it a certain way. You can approach it from different directions and come up with the same answer. So we're going to start off with this shape, and rather than draw the top, we're actually going to start with this step from the side view. Okay, so let's start out with measuring and see what our example showed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tall by, hope I can see my Xerox here. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, must be 6 length. So if you could, let's do a vertical line, and I'm trying to keep your exercises here compacted. This is going to be our reference sheet that we can use when you do your final project. So let's go ahead and go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vertically. Okay. And now we're going to go diagonal down. The temptation for a lot of students is to want to draw horizontally, but remember, in isometric view, your horizontal views are always going at a diagonal. So if you could go diagonally down towards the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And then we're going to put in this whole red shape that I outlined here. So we're going to go diagonally down, 1, 2, vertical, 1, 2. diagonal down, 1, 2, vertical, 1, 2, diagonal down, 1, 2, vertical, 1, 2. Okay, now we've drawn the side view. So before, where we drew the top surface all the time, the option you have is to draw from the side and then to grow back your shape and go as far as depth. So we have our x-axis and our y-axis. Now we're going to put in our z-axis. So from each of these corners, our shape is changing directions. Like in a staircase in architecture, they call this the rise and the run. So if we could go back and up to the right, I'm going to go up 1, 2, diagonal, 1, 2, 1, 2. So all of these stairs or steps are the same depth, right? Now, just like we talked about before, we get to play this fun little game of matching where things remain parallel. So if this was a horizontal surface, the back side is horizontal. If this was the run of the stairs vertical, we're going to keep the back end vertical. So hopefully this is starting to kind of click in. We had horizontal surface, vertical. It's kind of like playing a connect the dots, okay? And I for sure would love for you, vertical matches with vertical. So do you see these parallel railroad tracks going all the way up and down? For color coordinating, we have our bird's eye view. Here's the top of the stairs that you would actually be stepping on. And then this side is going to be the rise, or the step up. We're ready to draw and create our own Cubert game. The next one I want us to try together is a pathway, because for part of your final project, we're going to have an awesome time creating this whole world. And you might want to create different buildings linking to other buildings. You might want to be having floating cities connecting to other sections on your artwork. So I think it's really important to be able to not just do shapes, but to consider that the landscape can be moving from east, west, north, and south. So see this shape, it kind of looks like a Z. I want you to imagine though that this is almost like a compass, right? Where things are moving in different directions. If we had a, what is it, never eat shredded wheat. Okay, so we can use this isometric plane to show direction as well. So let's take a peek here. I'm just gonna divvy this up into little cubes for you. So you can see, looks like we have a 3 section here. So this is a 3 block long. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this one again is 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is kind of fun if we were creating some kind of pathway to go from one area or building or structure to another. So let's start off with going 1, 2, 3, diagonally down to the right. And then we're going to go diagonally down to the left, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And diagonally down 2 more. Okay. To make this thick now, I could make this path, 5 blocks thick or 2 blocks thick, but let's go ahead and just do 1 for now. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make this as if I'm wandering around the graph paper, making everything 1 block thick. Now remember, all of your horizontals always end on the isometric grid. So for now, don't be drawing off grid yet. Right now, this is like a thin slice of paper, but if we want to make this thick like we did our other shapes, we need to draw our walls coming down. So let's do thinner than before, maybe just 1 block thick on every corner. Now, if you're tempted to put a line here, that would make sense if it was see-through, but we don't want our path to be glass. It might be a little confusing for some. So we'll keep our thickness on these corners. And if you're asking yourself, well, how do I know where a corner is? Just notice where something shifts and changes direction, and that will tell you where it is. Now we get to play our fun puzzle piece game where if it's here, we're going to match it with a parallel railroad track on the base. If it's going diagonally this way, the base matches and coordinates. Some students are always wondering kind of how do I know when to stop this line? Just imagine that if this path is blocking your view, then you couldn't see what was happening here behind it, okay? And if this is this way, we'll finish off our pathway here. So really simple one that will be helpful for connecting all of your worlds together. All right, to wrap up today's lesson, we're gonna do one last shape and then we'll meet back together for another class where we'll get even more complicated and have some more fun. So the last one I wanna do with you today is this open shape. Let's take a peek and see how we could construct it. We could start from the side and build coming back. We could also start from this front piece and grow this way, or we could start from the top and pull down. And I think since we're most comfortable with that method, we'll start with the top. Let me go ahead and take a look at our example. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units that way, and 1, 2, 3 units this way. So if you could, give me just a rectangle, an isometric view that's 5 by 3. So let's go up diagonally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Diagonally down 1, 2, 3. And then just parallel that. So we're essentially making a parallelogram or a rectangle and isometric view. Let's see how tall. I'm guessing it's going to be the same, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. So let's do the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you guessed it, we have to keep these parallel. So this V or this check mark shape we saw is going to be replicated at the base. Okay. Now here I see that they've done a little cutout window, a little different than here where we carved out a whole section. We're just carving a little peek through. So I'm hoping your mind is starting to be able to see and differentiate. If we just did a 1 block wide border, almost like a picture frame on that surface, we can cut out that. The same on this, we're wanting to create a 1 block thick picture frame, if you will, and walk around this grid. And the last one on this surface. Now this is the fun part. If this was to be see-through, we could take this back corner just like we did with our other cubes and pull this line down. Although we don't want to go in front of this. I'll use a pencil to show you. It is back here. Maybe I should use dots instead. It is going down this way. The question for many students is, where do I make it stop? So if this was open here and open this way, so just like we did in this example, we're going to go this corner back. And the question is, when do I stop? And if I'm looking through this way, I could go here, and it is going through behind here, but I don't see it. The intersection where those 3 meet is going to be the final resting place. And I would love for you to add color to this. So our bird is going to see our top surface here, as well as the floor, which in this case is this area down below, but it's blocked by these couple of side panels. Okay. Then we have our red surface on this end. Thank you guys for doing such a good job on your note taking here. It's good to go slow and just get a good foundation so that as we pick up the pace in our next lesson, you'll have all these notes to look back on to refresh your memory. And even when you're designing your buildings and your structures for your worlds, it's nice to kind of have this as a little alphabet for you to look back and see what kind of cool ideas you can build on from these shapes that we've drawn together. All right, so we've got our right side of the gentleman in blue, the left side lady in red, and then question, this one right here would be the same lady right here. Woo! Love her. She'd be looking and seeing this surface through the window, so that would be also a red panel peeking out right there. So great job today, guys. Hope that was fun for you. See if you guys can challenge mom and dad or some siblings to do some awesome ideas with you before our next video. Take care.